having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Let's pause and take a moment to talk about something very important. Life has its pressures for everyone, and we often carry the immense weight of expectation to never show weakness, to hide our true feelings, and believe that asking for support somehow makes us less of a person. But bottling things up isn't the answer. It can often lead to feeling down, burnout, or other unhealthy habits. We want to normalize the idea that it's okay to struggle. Real strength actually comes from opening up about what you are carrying and doing something about it so that you can be at your best for yourself and everyone in your life. If you're feeling the weight of the world, or even if things just feel a bit off, I can't stress enough the value of talking to someone. It could be a friend, a loved one, or a therapist. We here at This Week Explained believe that therapy can be incredibly valuable. Whether you've been in therapy personally or not, the broader benefits are clear. It's so helpful for learning positive coping skills, understanding how to set healthy boundaries, and it really empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it's so important to remember that therapy isn't just for those who've experienced combat or major trauma. It's a tool for anyone looking to improve their mental well-being and navigate life's challenges. That's why we're thrilled to talk about BetterHelp. With over 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it clearly resonates with users, boasting an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars based on over 1.7 million client reviews. It's also incredibly convenient. You can connect with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy schedule. And you can even switch therapists at any time if you feel it's not the right fit. And here's something special for our listeners. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp is offering our listeners 10% off their first month. What are you waiting for? Talk it out with BetterHelp. Once again, our listeners get 10% off their first month by going to betterhelp.com/thisweek. That's BetterHelp.com/thisweek. Hello, and welcome to This Week Explained, your essential download on the global stories making headlines. We're ready to unpack yet another complex week from around the globe, but before we dive in, just a quick reminder. If you want to get alerted to new episodes as they are released, make sure you're following or subscribed wherever you're listening right now. It's the easiest way to stay updated. And hey, if you're enjoying the show and want to help others discover it, leaving a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify really makes a difference. Also, did you know that Spotify allows comments? This is a great way to get involved with the podcast. Others can view those comments, and now Spotify is allowing others to interact with your comments. This keeps the conversation going long after the episode airs. Finally, remember that This Week Explained is part of the awesome Leon Media Network. You can discover more great podcasts over at leonmedianetwork.com. All right, let's get to why you're here, which are all of those stories that are shaping your world in real time. This week on the podcast, we're diving deep into the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. We'll also unpack recent intelligence that Russia and China may not be the best friends that we've been led to believe they are. As always, we're starting a discussion in Ukraine. And when we talk about conflicts like this one, it's easy to get lost in the sheer scale of it all. But what's been striking me recently is Ukraine's persistent ability to strike deep within Russian territory, targeting their defense industrial base. It's not just about the front lines anymore, is it?
No, it absolutely is not. Tiana, you're correct on that one. And this development or this is actually a development that really speaks to Ukraine's evolving capabilities and strategic thinking. This is without the support of the United States. Just recently, the final military equipment from the Biden administration has made its way to Ukraine. So now Ukraine is working with only what Western Europe is providing and what they're creating themselves, and they're still able to strike deep within Russian territory. Now, we've seen reports, for example, of Ukrainian forces striking deep inside Russia, and it's not like they're just going after some random targets. They are striking critical infrastructure that is really critical for the Russian military. Recently, Ukraine hit a fuel plant, and that fuel plant is actually a critical manufacturer of basic components for Russian explosives, Russian ammunition, and rocket fuel.
I remember reading that the head of the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation, Lieutenant Andrei Kovalenko, really highlighted the significance of that strike, mentioning the massive annual production of ammonia and ammonium nitrate, both key for explosives. Sounds like they're hitting them where it hurts, economically and militarily.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just that one plant that they hit. They've also hit many other facilities in Samara, one of the Russian oblasts. These facilities are producing explosive material components, and they're catalysts for oil refineries that ultimately produce aviation and rocket fuel. And they're also producing diesel at these facilities. So this isn't about isolated incidents. It is a sustained strategic campaign to degrade Russia's ability to wage war by targeting their industrial backbone. So for the folks at home, imagine someone consistently hitting the factories that make the vital parts of your country's military. It's this slow strangulation. It's not a knockout punch. They're not knocking out Russia. They're just slowly chipping away, and it's incredibly effective in the long run.
So what is the messaging here? To me, it almost feels like Ukraine is saying, you can hit us, but we can reach you too, even deep in your own territory, which I know early on in the conflict, they tried to stay out of Russia entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. They were not striking in Russia, and it was all part of, right, as at least the Biden administration at the time said, here are the weapons, but you cannot use those weapons within Russian territory. Then they open that up to a little sliver of Russia that they can hit. So what Ukraine is doing now is, or what they did at that point was say, okay, we're going to make our own weapons, our own drones, all of this stuff, and then we can do whatever we want with it. Now that's what we're seeing with these strikes deep within Russian territory. And just like you said, this is exactly what they're saying. There was a time where Russia, you thought you were safe from us attacking you. That's no longer true. And it is a powerful message from Ukraine. It's not just because of the immediate tactical impact of this, but there's a psychological effect to this as well. And it forces Russia to divert resources to air bases. They have to now protect assets they previously thought were safe. And it creates a sense of vulnerability within Russia. Now, from an intelligence perspective, watching how Russia adapts to this is going to be key. Are they genuinely going to harden their targets, or are they going to shift production to another site?
All right, well, shifting gears slightly, because amidst all of this destruction, there are glimmers of something else happening. We saw the fourth round of prisoners of war exchanges on June 12th, and then another round on June 14th. As someone who's seen the reality of captured personnel, how significant are these exchanges, especially when they involve wounded soldiers or those held for extended periods of time?
Well, for the families, for the soldiers themselves, these exchanges are everything. This is a lifeline. It's a glimmer of hope in the darkest of circumstances. And when you are deployed, oftentimes the thought of what happens if you're captured is a quiet dread that eats away at you. So to see wounded POWs, those held since 2022, come home, it's a testament to the persistent, often unseen, often untalked about diplomatic efforts that are occurring behind the scenes. President Zelensky himself specifically noted that many of the exchanged Ukrainians were captured early in the conflict. There's also the return of 1,200 bodies. These are soldiers who are no longer living as they were held captive, predominantly military personnel. And that is heartbreaking, but it provides a measure of closure for countless families. You and I talk about this all the time, the absolute necessity for families to know what happened to their loved ones. Just to know whether they're alive or whether they did perish is key to some of these families. Even in the worst news, there's this form of peace that happens.
And yet, there's always the political undercurrent. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that they're ready for daily exchanges, while also accusing Ukraine of being unwilling to reciprocate. It feels like they're trying to weaponize even the humanitarian gestures.
You're right, they absolutely are. And it's a classic Russian tactic. You accuse the other side of what you yourself are doing, or of failing to meet a standard that you are setting.
I wouldn't say that it's just Russia who employs this tactic.
Yeah, I guess you're right on that one.
I think
Humans. This is a classic human tactic.
what humans do,
Yeah, and you're right. That does happen all the time. The U.S. does it sometimes. You're failing to meet our standards that we put. Well, that's our morals, right? We're going to talk about the Middle East, and obviously that's going to be something that comes up, putting your morals onto someone else. But in this case, Russia wants to discredit Ukraine. They want to deflect from their own documented abuses. And it is frustrating for all of us to watch because these exchanges should be purely humanitarian. But this is war, and in war, everything becomes a tool.
On the flip side, Russia seems to be preparing for a very long game. We saw President Putin himself discussing the 2027 to 2036 state rearmament program, which focuses on air defense, space systems, and AI and military tech. It's not just about winning the current war, is it? It's about being ready for the next one, potentially against NATO.
Yeah, exactly right. Putin's rhetoric about a what he calls, quote, universal air defense system, end quote, and the need for advanced digital technology and the need for AI. That's very telling to all of us. It suggests that they are absorbing lessons from Ukraine, particularly those drone attacks deep within Russian territory. They see their vulnerabilities and they're trying to fix them for the long haul. The goal here isn't just to defeat Ukraine. It's to build a military capable of projecting power and, if necessary, confronting a larger, more technologically advanced adversary like NATO.
Okay, but how do they finance this? Russia's economy was struggling even before the sanctions, and they've sustained significant losses, especially in their Black Sea fleet. Are they betting on increased oil prices, perhaps from the instability in the Middle East?
Yeah, and that is the multi-million, or rather the multi-billion-dollar question at hand. Financing is a huge hurdle within Russia. Their defense industrial base has historically been inefficient, and the U.S. has as well. That's another thing that I think is historically human. It is the inefficiency of the defense industrial base. Within this, the sanctions on Russia have only exacerbated all of this. Now, while higher oil prices could provide a temporary boost, it's not a sustainable long-term solution. And the global energy market is quite volatile. Look at it right now. So what Russia's doing is they're hoping for a combination of things. Continued circumvention of those sanctions that we keep talking about that we know don't work right now. They're going to do increased domestic production, and then perhaps a reevaluation of their strategic priorities. Reconstructing the Black Sea fleet, like you talked about, that's going to be an enormous undertaking just in and of itself, and it's going to cost them a large sum of money.
Well, you and I both know that Russia kind of has a habit of employing these short-term solutions and saying that they're going to come up with something better long-term and then just winding up leaning fully into their short-term solutions that aren't very sustainable, like their apartment buildings that they built for all those people moving into the cities that they're still having to live in that are really, they would be condemned here, I think, a lot of those places. And finally, in our discussion of this years-long war in Ukraine, it was interesting to see the Southeast European summit in Odessa with so many leaders reaffirming support for Ukraine. But then there's Serbia, attending but not signing the declaration, and President Vučić talking about investing in Ukrainian reconstruction, but facing outrage from Moscow. It just highlights the complex web of allegiances and pressures in the region, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It absolutely does. Serbia's position is particularly delicate. They have historical ties to Russia. They also aspire to join the EU. Vucic's attendance, that was a significant symbolic gesture towards Ukraine, even if he didn't even sign the full declaration. His willingness to consider reconstruction efforts speaks volumes about this potential shift in Serbia, or at least a hedging of bets. Now, Moscow's outrage shows how sensitive these relationships are for them and for Putin. They see any crack in their influence, that's a direct challenge to the Russian state. So it's this constant dance for countries in that region. They're trying to balance their own national interests because Russia's on their borders with these immense geopolitical pressures from both the global south and the global west.
It also reminds us that even with all the big picture strategic moves, the human element, the diplomatic tightropes, and the everyday decisions of leaders and individuals continue to shape the course of events. I think this is a good moment to shift to this week's explosive news story. Well, staying explosive, first of all, that wasn't a pun or anything, but it definitely feels like an understatement, doesn't it? I mean, as we talk today, in this very moment, the world feels a lot less stable than it did just last week. And as our listeners know, we haven't felt stable in years. For those just tuning in or perhaps just catching their breath, the long-simmering, often overshadowed conflict between Israel and Iran has erupted into the open. And now we're looking at large-scale warfare, another major conflict in the Middle East. So, Kervin, please walk us through the initial shockwaves. What happened early Friday morning on June 13th? I know you released a small episode on Thursday, I believe, or Friday. Yeah, but
and lied to people
and
said we were not going to record today.
Oh, you did? You said that? Oh,
yeah.
He is a liar, y'all. We're here. Sorry.
Here we are recording.
Yeah.
We matched our schedules up. Look at us for you guys.
Yeah, for you. Our schedules have aligned. All right, get to it.
Yes.
Tell us what's going on, please.
And I will, yes. And that's a great intro into this new but not so new conflict. And like Tiana said, I did put out an episode as it occurred, as things were ongoing. But I know everyone who's listening right now, and I do say everyone, you much rather this format of the podcast where Tiana and I are able to talk through these situations. It's just two curious humans trying to make sense of the world. And here is the bottom line. Friday morning dawned with massive explosions ripping through Tehran. Israeli officials did not wait. They quickly confirmed what was already an open secret. This was a major Israeli offensive, and they codenamed it Operation Rising Lion. What's their stated objective in this? Well, they're not being ambiguous about it. They are saying they want to cripple Iran's nuclear program and its strategic missile and air defense capabilities. This wasn't a precision strike against a single target. It was broad. It was multifaceted.
And the targets were both infrastructure and, chillingly, personnel, right? They didn't hide anything. They were like, we are going for your top military officials. Yep. They cannot hide. We're talking beyond just military facilities.
Yeah, beyond known nuclear and missile sites, they went after key military and scientific leaders. Iranian state media even quickly confirmed the death of the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, that's General Hossein Salami. Two other top nuclear scientists and another senior general also are confirmed killed. And though unconfirmed at this moment, there are reports circulating that Iran's armed forces chief of staff, that's Major General Mohammad Bagheri, he might also be among one of the casualties. Tiana, from my experience, decapitating leadership like that in this opening barrage of missile strikes and bombs going off, we're not talking about destroying capacity. It's about disrupting command and control at the highest levels. This was a fundamental blow to the Iranian regime.
Well, I mean, this is something that Israel has done several times in their many conflicts around that area of the world. It's not a new technique for them. And it is definitely a significant blow. And for years, we've talked about Israel's more surgical, almost shadowy operations inside Iran, like the sticky bombs and the robot-assisted assassinations. Even the Mossad, now confirmed to have been heavily involved in this, has a history of these precise covert actions, like seizing nuclear archives, destroying drones, previous strikes on nuclear facilities. Kervin, is this Operation Rising Lion a fundamentally new phase? Like more overt, more comprehensive?
Yeah, there's a reason I put the episode out. It's one of the very few times that we've done something like that, putting something out as it happens. We did it for Russia's invasion, and I did it for this one because we had talked about last week, right? You asked what to look for. As we talked about Iranian discussions for their nuclear capabilities. And I told you.
I didn't think it would happen this soon, though. They did not mess around. I thought there would be a little bit more time before they dove in, but no, they went for it.
They certainly did. Like I said, I told everyone to be on the lookout for that, not knowing whether it would happen this week. And now we're finding out that a lot of the talk in public between Netanyahu and the Trump administration putting out all of these teasers about a ceasefire in Gaza and, signing deals and all of the, Israel standing down was all a ploy to get Iran to not be on the lookout for what Israel was going to do. This is a dramatic escalation from Israel. I don't say that lightly. The scale and overtness of Operation Rising Lion, this is on a different plane from what they have done in the past. It signals Israel's intent to move beyond deterrence or this piecemeal disruption, focusing mainly on proxies and sending a few missiles into Iran. This is a more direct, systemic dismantling of what they perceive as an existential threat. They're no longer just plucking off individual leaves. They're attempting to strike at the root and the branches simultaneously. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a gamble, but it's one they've clearly decided is necessary.
And their justification, Kervin, Prime Minister Netanyahu stated Iran has taken, quote, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium, end quote, and could produce a nuclear weapon in a, quote, very short time, end quote. Yet others, including the U.S. and our allies, haven't issued similar warnings. That's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, I think you're correct to say the U.S. hasn't publicly issued these warnings, but U.S. intelligence has been warning of similar findings. We've talked about it on the podcast ourselves. And just before these attacks, and what really helped me identify that an attack was coming from Israel was that the IAEA issued a statement earlier in the week that Iran has not been complying with regulations set in place. I think this is why Israel saw this is urgent. This is an immediate threat to them. It was an IDF official who claimed they had intelligence indicating Iran was, quote, racing for a nuclear bomb, end quote. It's pushing them into a, quote, strategic window of opportunity, end quote. Now, they believe that they had to act now before they lost visibility on this, whether that intelligence is fully shared or whether U.S. Intelligence agencies get to see that intelligence and they can interpret it differently. It's clear Israel saw this as their moment. They've announced this operation is going to take several days, and it's going to continue as long as it takes. This is not just 1, 2, 3 missile barrages.
As long as it takes. That phrase just, it hangs in the air, doesn't it? It reminds me of those long days during your deployments when the end was always an abstract concept and not a date on the calendar. And speaking of which, the U.S. response has been swift and pointedly detached. Secretary of State Marco Rubio immediately stated the U.S. was not involved, yet Israel asked us to join.
Yeah, they did. And that public distancing from the U.S., that's a deliberate strategic play. It's this tightrope walk. So you have on one hand, the U.S. doesn't want to be dragged into a full-scale regional war in the Middle East. They've pulled diplomats, military families from Iraq, Bahrain, even Kuwait. They've beefed up air defenses in the Gulf. Now, Rubio did warn Iran, do not target U.S. interests. But then you have this on the other hand. Israel, the U.S. closest ally, explicitly requested U.S. involvement, especially for these deeply buried Fordo uranium enrichment sites. These sites, well underground, Israel believes is beyond their solo capabilities.
So Israel's asking for help with a particularly challenging target, and the U.S. is saying no, at least for now, and at least out in the open. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, to be perfectly honest. This comes after reports Trump even told Netanyahu previously he'd consider striking it if necessary. It's just a mixed message all around. It's hard to keep up. Like, what's the truth?
Yeah, exactly. We'll give you the truth here. But it's tough when you have an administration that is very mixed and will say one thing one day and then something completely different the next day. Now, the White House's current denial of direct involvement, stating now is the time to launch an attack. Now is not the time to launch an attack. That came from the White House. That actually contrasts with past conversations. The U.S. actually wants a diplomatic resolution to this, and they are asking Iran to give up its nuclear program and that would be the fastest path to peace. Now, we know Iran has said that they're not going to do that. And this refusal of the U.S. now to join Israel's kinetic operation means that Israel is going at this alone, at least offensively, because the U.S. is providing defensive capabilities. And yet, Tiana, despite these public statements, Iran still blames the United States. They were always going to blame the United States because it is Israel's strongest ally. And that means the risk of Iranian retaliation against U.S. assets remains incredibly high, even with Washington's efforts to create this distance from Israel. That's the part that keeps me up at night, knowing that, our people in Central Command and CENTCOM, they're facing this. They're having to deal with this uncertainty where they are.
It's a gut punch, isn't it? Knowing that those who serve, those we care about, are now potentially in even greater harm's way, regardless of our official stance. But, Kervin, Iran did retaliate after the initial Israeli strikes. What did we see there?
Yeah, they certainly did. Overnight and into the morning of June the 14th, Iran launched further waves of missiles and drones. Israeli reports confirm at least 3 civilians killed, dozens wounded, with strikes hitting central cities like Tel Aviv and areas near strategic military infrastructure. Now, most were intercepted, thankfully, but some did get through. And here's the critical observation. The volume and intensity of these retaliatory waves, those are decreasing from Iran. And that's when there is this strategic explanation for why that is.
So you were saying they're losing the punch to their attacks. So tell us why. This is the kind of insight that changes how you see the battlefield.
Yeah, and it comes down to launch capacity versus stockpile. Iran has a massive missile stockpile. I think there's a misconception there that they don't have thousands of missiles. They've estimated upwards of 3,000 or over 3,000 ballistic missiles. The problem here is they don't have 3,000 launchers. So they rely on a relatively small fleet of mobile launchers, or the TELs, The last estimate has it fewer than 150 for their medium and long range systems, which is what would be needed in order to strike back against Israel. And these TELs aren't like firing a rifle. They require setup time, mobility, camouflage, so that Israeli planes can't destroy them before they can get the launches off. And this forces Iran to launch in staggered volleys, not all at once.
So they can't just unleash everything they have at once. And Israel is exploiting that limitation.
Exactly. Israel has achieved air superiority in Iran, and they've successfully penetrated Iranian radar coverage. This means they're not just dodging missiles. They're tracking and destroying those mobile launchers as they are used. Each TEL taken out doesn't just reduce the number of missiles in the next volley, it slows down the entire pace of Iran's retaliation. This has two immediate, profound effects. One, Iran's ability to overwhelm Israel's air defenses with saturation attacks, that diminishes significantly. And two, the overall intensity and frequency of Iran's volleys drop, even if they still have thousands of warheads just gathering dust there in storage.
And also, once they fire from a location, they have to quickly move to another location because Israel knows where they fired from and they're coming for you guys. So they have to hustle and move somewhere else. I mean, it's fascinating and terrifying all at once. It means Israel isn't just defending, they're actively degrading Iran's ability to even fight back effectively. We're seeing follow-up Israeli strikes today targeting those launch facilities, right?
Yep, exactly. They're hitting suspected TEL storage locations. I know they hit near Mahrabad Airport, and also a military radar installation in Isfahan. This is a sustained, systematic effort, and it's putting immense pressure on Supreme Leader Khomeini's regime. And while they're still issuing public threats in Iran, their leadership is grappling with the confirmed loss of key IRGC commanders, the very people who would plan and execute a robust response. Their air defense systems are degraded, and internally, the Iranian public is increasingly anxious. They feel vulnerable like they never have before.
In the proxies, we've talked about Iran's axis of resistance, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iraqi militias, and the Houthis. Have they jumped into the fray? Because, they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did without Iran's backing.
Absolutely. And I would say the answer to that question is yes and no. We're seeing several missile launches from Yemen, so the Houthis are getting involved. I don't think they care about their lives or anything. But Hamas, Hezbollah, the militias in Iraq, they remain largely restrained. This is a clear indicator that they're calculating the cost. The price of full-scale retaliation will be incredibly high. They likely fear drawing preemptive Israeli or even American strikes against their own assets. That's a key piece of information for us, Tiana, for gauging the broader regional impact. The fact that they're holding back despite Tehran's public vows of Israeli ruin, that to me speaks volumes.
Do you think Iran's going to continue backing these proxies after they kind of didn't come to their rescue when they needed it? What do you think?
Yeah. I
don't know.
I am one. They can't, economically, they can't continue to back these groups.
But I'm not even just talking about them not being able to do it from a financial standpoint. I'm like, is it going to be punished? Are they going to be punished for not backing Iran right now?
It's a tough question to answer because my thoughts are, does the Iranian regime exist in the near future? It's completely devastated. It's been the past 12 months for Iran have been historical. Yeah, they've lost their president.
So everything's kind of fluid right now, in flux, trying to see what's going to happen. Okay.
And they're also dealing domestically with a certain sect of people who are upset and they want freedoms.
Yeah.
And so they're protesting. So now, not only are they dealing with this, external threat from Israel, there are internal threats among their own people with these domestic protests.
We've talked to a few of those people.
Yes.
Yeah. So, looking ahead, what do you think is next? What's the likely trajectory for this conflict? Because it feels like we're in uncharted waters right now.
Yeah, and we absolutely are. I would say, first of all, expect ongoing Israeli suppression of those launch platforms. They're going to continue to locate and destroy missile launchers. They're going to destroy command infrastructure in real time. This means Iran's capacity for direct high volume missile retaliation that's going to continue to degrade as well. The more of those launchers that are destroyed, the less Iran can fire in a given window. Secondly, with the missile options curtailed, I think we're going to see a shift to asymmetric responses from Iran. We're going to see cyber attacks against Israel, potentially cyber attacks against the United States. I think we'll see terrorism abroad via proxies or activating those proxies in more limited or deniable ways. I've seen reports of several terror groups that have issued statements to prepare for sleeper cell attacks across Israel, Western Europe, and yes, even the United States.
All of this is, frankly, a nightmare scenario for the citizens of those regions, but it is also a nightmare for intelligence agencies, isn't it? The distributed, less traceable threats.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a different kind of fight, and there's also the diplomatic nightmare that happens. The options there are collapsing. Iran formally rejected renewed nuclear talks with the U.S. earlier today. The path to a negotiated solution seems to have completely vanished, at least for now.
I mean, why would they? Why would they talk to us? They don't trust us. Yeah. So for now, that's the part that kind of sticks with me. The U.S. is refusing to join this fight directly, even with Israel's plea for Fordo. But as senior White House officials said, whatever happens with Israel's strikes cannot be prevented. They're not joining, but they're not stopping it either. And they're still holding out hope for a future peaceful resolution if Iran gives up its nuclear weapons program. Feels like a delicate, dangerous dance.
Yeah, very dangerous dance. And the bottom line here is stark. As Israel gains air dominance and systematically eliminates Iran's launchers, the ability to project conventional power into Israeli skies diminishes. The war is no longer symmetrical. Every passing hour tilts it further in Israel's favor when it comes to direct missile exchanges. The U.S. is on the sidelines here, at least for the kinetic fight, but the presence there is still felt. They are still helping Israel defend its borders, as is Jordan, as is Saudi Arabia, mind you. And Iran will certainly factor all of them into any long-term retaliatory calculus.
That paints a sobering picture, Kervin, and one that makes you grateful for every quiet moment, knowing the stakes for so many people across the globe. We will definitely continue monitoring this, bring you the facts, and try to make sense of what feels like an increasingly complicated world. For now, let's shift our focus to the change in rhetoric towards Russia and China and new intelligence that suggests they aren't as friendly as we all assumed. Remember those videos of them at the Olympics together, just hanging out? They were like frat broing out together in their little box.
Gross.
Yes. I
remember.
Yeah. We will unpack all of that. But first, we need to take a quick break for a message from our sponsors. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners. As we hinted at before the break, we are diving deep into a story that has been quietly bubbling up, one that completely upends the public narrative we've all been fed. We're talking about Russia and China, and it's not the no limits partnership that we hear about on the world stage, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, a recently leaked document from Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, it paints a picture of deep paranoia within Moscow regarding Beijing's intentions. It's an 8-page revelation that essentially calls China the enemy.
Well, we called this two egos of that size acting like they were both on a level playing field and they considered each other, equals and partners and everything. I was like, this is not going to last. One of them is going to want to have superiority over the other because that's just how it works in these
You
things.
absolutely called it months ago, maybe even a year ago.
No, while they were freaking hanging out at the Olympics. I was like, this
Oh,
is not going
yeah.
to end well. Kind of like how we called, Trump and Elon falling out because they have
Yep.
two big old egos too. It's just, it
Yes.
doesn't work out whenever you have a bunch of egomaniacs, trying to volley for superiority. It doesn't work out. So Moscow's not mincing words, directly stating that, well, not directly, I guess, indirectly stating that China is the enemy. And that is a stark contrast to the handshakes and the beaming smiles that we see that pass between Putin and Xi Jinping. What exactly does this document reveal?
Well, I think the core fear that is revealed in the document is that Russia genuinely believes China is eyeing parts of its Far East. And we're talking about regions like Vladivostok, historic territories that some Chinese nationalists claim were unfairly seized by Russia in the 1800s.
Like Siberia?
Yes, absolutely. And look at that, Russia unfairly seizing land. Where have we heard that story before? All through history. Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
And what I'm referring to here is the 1860 Treaty of Peking. It ceded Vladivostok to Russia. It set the border along the Amur and Ussuri rivers. But the FSB believes China is actively researching old Chinese communities in the area to build a case that this land, much like Taiwan, was originally theirs.
Kind of like how Russia just waddled right into Ukraine. They're like, this was ours first. And we bring this up every single time well, not every single time, but we bring it up quite frequently. How far back do we need to go to find people like the original borders of these countries? How far back? What is the legitimate border for these countries? So,
yeah.
A historical grievance being weaponized for future territorial claims. It's classic. It's a classic play. But how concrete are these fears? Is it just historical revisionism, or are there more active measures that could possibly be taken in the near future?
Yeah, it is more than revisionism, Tiana. The document highlights that in 2023, China's Ministry of Natural Resources actually mandated that new maps must use Chinese names for Vladivostok and also several other cities. The FSB interprets this as a deliberate attempt to subtly convince the local populations in those areas that the land should belong to China. Oh, where have we heard that before? Ukraine. So it's pot and kettle, right? This is a very subtle, long-term game of influence operations from China.
And it sounds like Russia isn't just worried about their land. What else is on the FSB's worry list when it comes to China?
So beyond territorial integrity, the FSB is deeply concerned about China's growing ambitions in the Arctic, specifically the North Sea route. Now, for China, this route is a golden ticket. It's a faster, cheaper shortcut for goods from Asia to Europe. So if China gains significant control or access, it reshapes global trade routes and it gives them immense leverage. And then there's a more classic intelligence concern. Stealing military secrets. The FSB fears China is actively trying to pilfer Russian military intelligence, including details about their operations in Ukraine.
So even with a war going on in Europe, Russia is dedicating resources to worrying about China's clandestine activities on their own turf. China has clandestine activities all over the place, y'all. Remember the police, the police stations they set up here in New York City. That speaks volumes about how significant this threat is perceived to be by Russia, and it sounds like their counterintelligence efforts are quite active.
Yeah, they are. This particular document explicitly states that Chinese spies are trying to recruit Russian agents, even targeting Russians married to Chinese nationals. And then on the flip side, China is apparently keeping a very close watch on the 20,000 Russian students studying in China, even giving lie detector tests to their own agents when they return from Russia. It's a full-blown, tense, and fast-moving real-world spy war.
A spy war while publicly touting a no-limits partnership. It's a fascinating, if not horrifying, dichotomy. I remember you telling me years ago when we would talk about these grand alliances that there's always an undercurrent of self-interest. There's always a calculation behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's always why I talk about the nuance of it, right? And Russian intelligence has never fully trusted China, no matter how friendly things appear on the surface. That no-limits partnership might be tactically useful for now, but that's because of the given geopolitical landscape. But in the long term, Russia unequivocally views China as a significant danger. It is a partnership of convenience, not of genuine trust.
And that makes perfect sense when you consider the historical animosities, the geographic proximity, and the sheer power dynamics that are at play here. It's the kind of complex, often contradictory relationship that intelligence agencies grapple with every single day. And thanks to this leak, we now get a glimpse into this reality. Like I said, we called it right from the jump. So, Carvin, thank you for breaking this down for us. It really highlights how much goes on behind the scenes that the public never hears about. Unlike here in America, where we hear about everything currently, everything comes out eventually.
The last few months.
Yeah, that's what I mean. For this,
We're going to write a book about it.
huh? You're going to write a book about it?
No. That's what everybody does, right?
Oh.
Like, let's keep all these secrets. Like the recent one with the Biden administration.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't have dementia. That's not happening. And then the very people who were saying that wrote a book about how they were concerned he has dementia. And it was true.
Which...
for profit.
We aren't dumb. It was obvious. So, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Nope. I think that's it for now.
Well, I just wanted to wish a happy Father's Day to all the dads and stepdads and single moms and single dads and grandpas who act as the paternal figure in their grandbabies' lives, and gay best friends, and just anyone who is an active participant in the development of all the little minds that we have sprouting up. The next generation that's going to take over this planet from us whenever we finally retire. Just thank you. Happy Father's Day to all you dads and daddy figures out there. We love all of you. And
thank you, Tiana.
Happy Father's Day to you. The best dad on the planet. Our 3 kids friggin' adore you. You're their favorite man ever. And thank you to our dads. For better or worse, we're here. Just kidding.
They're still looking out for us.
They certainly are. So just wanted to give a little shout out because it is Father's Day today as we record this. And we hope that you guys have a wonderful day. And
beautifully said, Tiana.
I don't know if it was beautiful, but I was trying to get everybody in there, every possibility in there. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to This Week Explained. We hope that you found it both informative and engaging. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. For more in-depth coverage of these stories and more, be sure to follow us on social media at This Week Explained.
Tiana, thank you so much. And until next week, stay safe out there.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.